T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower.
Challenging authority and the negative impact of compromising integrity. On January 28, 1986, at the Kennedy Space Center in Cape Canaveral, Florida, NASA launched the Space Shuttle Challenger, ignoring the conflict raised by engineers the previous day about the very cold temperatures predicted at launch time, which had engineers concerned about the safety of the flight. NASA felt pressured to launch Challenger because they had already delayed the launch 6 times. Ultimately, senior members of the launch team succumbed to NASA's pressure and agreed to proceed with the launch. In result, the Challenger exploded over the Atlantic Ocean 73 seconds after launch. All 7 crew members, including the civilian teacher, were killed, and it was the first major failure of NASA's Space Shuttle program, causing the Space Shuttle program to go on hold for nearly 3 years. In the early 1980s, NASA was exploring space and bringing satellites into space with its Space Shuttle program. To obtain funding from Congress, NASA committed to a goal of launching a shuttle twice a month. NASA had delayed mission STS-51L with the Challenger shuttle 6 times already due to technical and weather problems. Therefore, NASA felt pressured to launch this mission of the Challenger shuttle. For the first time ever, a civilian citizen, Krista McGough, was allowed on board a NASA flight into space. Miss McGough was a high school teacher who was planning to teach lessons while in space. Although NASA regularly launched space shuttles, because there was a teacher on board, this mission of Challenger was watched by many schools across the United States.
I actually even remember watching the Challenger explosion live. I remember where the TV was set up. It was kind of on the back left wall of the classroom, and we all kind of huddled around the TV.
So we had all gathered in the auditorium, all the kids in the school, to watch it live on TV. And so what I remember is watching it live on TV with the whole school and watching.
There are many large and complicated machines on the space shuttle. One of the most important pieces of equipment are the solid rocket boosters. These are the rockets that hold the gases that are burned to push the shuttle into space. There are 3 solid rocket boosters on the space shuttle. For Challenger, Morton Thiokol is the company that made the solid rocket boosters for NASA.
McDonald, and at the time of the Challenger, I was the director of the Space Shuttle solid rocket motor project for my company that made the solid rocket boosters for the Space Shuttle. The company was called Morton Thiokol Incorporated.
Surrounding the solid rocket booster is an O-ring. The O-ring keeps all the gases sealed in the rocket. These gases are extremely flammable. The O-ring is a flexible consistency that can expand and contrast with changes in temperature. The day before the scheduled launch, weather forecasts predicted unseasonably low temperatures for Florida. Alan McDonald didn't think it was safe to launch. He thought the low temperatures forecasted could cause the O-rings to shrink too much and leak gases, which might cause an explosion. The rocket boosters were designed to launch between an air temperature range of 40 to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. Some engineers at Morton Thiokol didn't think it was safe to launch Challenger in the cold weather because the cold could cause the O-rings to fail and make the shuttle explode. Alan McDonald asked his engineers to calculate what they thought would be the lowest, safest temperature to launch. Alan then scheduled a conference call with representatives from both NASA and Morton Thiokol that evening before the launch to understand the lowest, safest temperature to launch. On the call that evening, the Morton Thiokol engineers recommended not to launch below 53 degrees Fahrenheit. NASA challenged this recommendation, saying there was not enough data to support this recommendation. The team of engineers and vice presidents from Morton Thiokol, who were in Utah, went on hold from the phone call to discuss the launch recommendation further. Meanwhile, Alan was in the conference with NASA at Cape Canaveral.
I had a large argument with the NASA people. I told them that I don't know who made this recommendation and how it got changed, but I don't care if it was the CEO of the company, they cannot accept it.
While on mute from the phone call, the general manager of Mort Thiokol, who was the most senior individual in the room, said he thought proceeding with the launch was reasonable, and then he asked the others if they had a reason not to launch. This team from Mort Thiokol returned to the phone call with NASA and agreed to launch with no temperature restrictions. NASA needed a senior person from Mort Thiokol to sign a letter saying that it was okay to launch.
The NASA management from Huntsville said, well, we need to have that recommendation put in writing and signed by a responsible Thiokol official. And I knew who that responsible Thiokol official was. That was me. And I made the smartest decision in my entire life. I told them I refused to sign that.
Instead, Joe Kilminster, the vice president of Space Booster Program at Mort Thiokol, signed the letter to NASA agreeing to proceed with the launch. Before the night ended, Alan McDonald repeated his concerns to the NASA leaders, recommending they postpone their launch. On the morning of January 28, 1986, the weather was as cold as predicted. To prevent waterline from breaking, NASA had opened the faucets to keep the water flowing. Therefore, there was ice covering the entire launch pad. NASA sent out an ice team twice to knock off as much ice as possible. Just after 11:30 in the morning, the countdown to launch began. With the national audience watching, Challenger lifted off the launch pad. However, 73 seconds after Challenger was launched, it exploded over the Atlantic Ocean, killing all 7 crew members, including Krista McGolf, Gregory Gravis, Judith Rinsky, Francis Scobie, Ronald McNair, Mike Smith, and Ellison Onizuka. After the Challenger exploded, the nation was shocked. Many of the children in schools who were watching the launch were confused and sad.
And at first, everybody was just kind of wondering what was going on, what was happening. And I remember that the TV, watching the television and being in shock when they finally said, something had happened. And I remember our teacher cutting off the TV. Some people were crying, and it was really a remarkable day and one that I will never forget.
We were kind of watching it in a little bit of confusion because it wasn't clear to us that there was an explosion. It kind of just looked like part of the launch. But then we sort of realized, as we talked to our teacher and as we watched it a little bit more, what had happened, and then our confusion turned to sadness.
A presidential commission was formed to investigate what caused the Challenger accident. Meanwhile, the United States Space Shuttle program was placed on a suspension until the investigation was complete, which lasted nearly 32 months. Many experts, including Alan McDonald, helped with the investigation, which revealed the cold temperatures shrunk the O-rings, causing a fire to start on the side of the solid rocket booster. This fire soon got out of control and led to the explosion of the Challenger. The investigation also revealed that Alan McDonald's concerns about the cold weather impact on the safety of the flight was never raised to the NASA launch leaders. Following the investigation, NASA implemented 2 changes to prevent a disaster like Challenger from reoccurring. First, NASA created an anonymous phone number for raising concerns to NASA leaders. Second, NASA allowed a representative from each of the subcontractors to present in the mission control room during a launch. The Challenger disaster was a tragic event. The Challenger crew is remembered each year in a ceremony at the Kennedy Space Center.
The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we'll continue to follow them.